Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. This is a webinar where we talk about Lyme disease. And I try to help get some better understanding of this illness by answering your questions, all right? So this is an educational webinar. And no two of these are the same because they're all different based on the questions that you provide to me. I see that there's a lot of familiar names on my sign-up board tonight. So to those of you that are coming back, I'm glad to see you here again. And to those of you that are new, it's good to see some new faces as well, too. The way that these webinars work, you create them with your questions. And the way you do that is over here on the bottom of your computer, over here on the right-hand side of the computer screen, is a chat box that you can write your question to me. Excuse me. I was just having a little ginger ale before I got online here. Anyhow, in terms of writing that question to me, do not hit the enter key until your whole question is complete. What happens is if you try to write a question to me and hit the enter key multiple times, it sends multiple questions my direction. Each time you hit the enter key, it creates a separate question, and it gets to be a little complicated for me to follow. As we're doing the webinar tonight, I'm going to show your questions on the screen. So those of you that are participating here in the live version of it will actually be able to read the questions on the screen. Those of you that are watching this in a recorded version, however, will not get that. It doesn't show up in the recorded version. So I'm going to read the questions as we go through this tonight as well, too. Let's see. Oh, yes. And as usual, I am creating a recording of this. I will get that recording out sometime tomorrow morning. And usually what I try to do is to send you or not usually, what I do, I usually by around 9 or 9:30 a.m. in the morning, I will send you an email notifying you that that recording is ready. And also have information about how you can sign up for next week's webinar too. All right. And then a few more business keeping things here. I am going to be doing 2 more webinars after tonight. So we're on for tonight and then the next 2 Thursdays, and then I'll take a week off. Those of you that did try to come and participate a couple weeks ago, I apologize. I had some last minute things that came up that I had to cancel it. But so it's been a few weeks since we've been together, and I'm glad to see everyone here. So I think that takes care of it. Why don't we go ahead and get started here? Try to find the first question. All right. First question is from Megan. Hi, Dr. Ross. Hello. Let's see. In 2017, I showed up with clear positive for Bartonella on ELISA and equivocal for Lyme on standard Western blot, positive for bands 41 IgM and IgG and 93 IgG. I recently did the IGeneX immunoblot to try and rule out cross-reactivity with Bartonella for those bands. I came up with a weak positive IgM for bands 23, 34, and 41, and positive for IgG 28. Could this still be cross-reactivity with BART because results are so weak? Is it possible for BART to have ongoing IgM antibodies like Lyme? Symptoms and vector exposure primarily point to BART, but some symptoms do overlap with Lyme. Okay, so in terms of, so when we're doing the Western blot for Lyme, I want to talk about that first to be able to answer your question. So when we're doing the Western blot and also this test called an immunoblot, what we're doing in the laboratory is we're trying to see, is your immune system making antibodies that attach to proteins that are found on the covering of the Lyme germ, okay? And on both this Western blot and immunoblot techniques, what they do is they look to see if you have antibodies against 12 proteins found on the covering of the Lyme germ. We recognize that a test is positive if you have antibodies against 2 of 6 of those 12, okay? So although we test for 12, there's 6 that are important. And of those 6 that are important, you have to have antibodies against at least 2, all right? So the 6 are 23, 25 is one of the 6, 31, 34, 39, 41, and the one called 83, 93 also sometimes shows up as 93, okay? All right? If you have antibodies against at least 2 of those 6, that's called a positive Lyme test. So if I look back at your IgG result from the first Western blot that you had, my interpretation would have been that you had a positive test back then because you said that you were positive at band 41 on the IgM and IgG. So I assume you mean that you were positive for 41 on the IgG and you were positive at 93, which is part of that 83-93 complex, okay? So back then you were positive. Now, the standard lab that does that standard Western blot, not an IGeneX one, but the one that's approved by the Centers for Disease Control and FDA, that's probably what you had back then, would not have called that 4193 positive, but a Lyme literate medical doctor would have looked at that and said, oh, you're positive against two of the important proteins, that's positive, okay? So back then, if I was treating you, I probably would have called that a positive test back then. All right, so just so you know that, okay? All right, now, you're raising an interesting question. That is, if you have infections, other infections, is it possible that can cause some of the Lyme germ Western blot to be positive, okay? All right, so remember, what we're doing with the Western blot is we're looking to see, does your immune system have antibodies that attach to proteins found on the covering of the Lyme germ, okay? Now, what we know is that certain viruses, not Bartonella, but certain viruses, when we have those virus infections, sometimes the antibodies we make against those viruses can attach to some of the Lyme proteins, okay? And so, for instance, those 12 proteins I said that we test for in a Western blot, the reason we focus on 6 and not all 12 is those other 6 are ones that sometimes when you have antibodies against viruses, you might have antibodies against those other 6, okay? In addition, rarely you can have antibodies against those viruses, made against viruses that will attach to 31 and could attach to 41, okay? So 31 and 41 are not the cleanest. When you get an antibody stuck on those proteins, it's possible, remotely possible, very small chance possible, that it could be that those antibodies are actually made against a virus that's in you that happened to have attached to those Lyme proteins, all right? Now, that is not so with Bartonella. So I know you're raising the question, could your Bartonella be causing your Lyme Western blot to be positive? In my opinion, no. It is certain viruses that might give us a false positive test on a Western blot, but not the bacteria, which is Bartonella. I am not aware of any evidence to suggest that that is one of the causes of a positive Western blot, all right? So again, I think based on your original Western blot, you have solid evidence of having Lyme. It's a positive Lyme test, I should say. The test was positive. Again, to make a Lyme disease diagnosis, there's many things you need to consider. You have to consider what's the risk of getting it, which it sounds like you've had some exposures to ticks before. You've got to look at where you are when you might have had those. So for instance, people out of New England have a greater chance from their tick bites of getting Lyme than people in the middle of Arizona, for instance. Okay, that's not to say Lyme isn't in Arizona, it is, but there's a higher chance that the ticks on the East Coast have it than the ticks in Arizona, for instance, okay? You also have to look at what are the symptoms that a person has. The chances that a test is correct when it's positive goes up based on if you have more symptoms of the illness. All right. And then finally, we have to see, are there any physical exam findings? Now, often there aren't many physical exam findings in Lyme. Okay. So anyhow, that would be my thoughts about that for you. Okay. Make sure I answered all your questions here. I think I did. Yeah. All right. I'm just going to do a quick screen share because I know I just talked about how do you diagnose Lyme, and some of you may be wondering, what do you mean it's just not based on a test? It's not. In fact, testing can be wrong. They can be wrong negative, and they can be wrong in a positive way too. So let me do a quick screen share here. All right, so this is my website, Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. I know most of you are aware of this site. This is full of Lyme disease information, okay? And the biggest part of this website is right here, this online Lyme guide where you can find answers probably to most of, maybe 95% of Lyme questions you can find here. I just keep slowly adding different articles to this, but this is getting to be a very comprehensive source of information. Okay, so for information about how do you diagnose something, take a look at my section here. It's called Lyme Disease 101. Take a look at the How to Diagnose chapter. All right, and here's my video article on how to diagnose chronic Lyme disease more than a test. Okay, I review the important things you need to consider. Okay, all right. back here. All right. Thanks for that question, Megan. Good luck to you. Hello, Janelle. Let's say hi, Dr. Ross. I am from British Columbia, and I'm sure you know it's very hard to find a Lyme literate medical doctor professional here. So I just want to say thank you for everything you have done for the Lyme community. You're welcome. You are truly making a difference. I am currently on my third cycle of minocycline and metronidazole, 2 months on, 2 months off, along with herbs and supplements. My symptoms improved dramatically by the end of the 2 months on, but are all usually back by the end of the 2 months off. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on the new research that was published about the triple antibiotic combination of daptomycin, doxycycline, and ceftriaxone. I am a nurse and am drawn to the evidence-based treatments, and this one looks very promising. Thanks so much. Okay, so in the world of Lyme, so let me try to frame your question first. Okay, Janelle. So in Lyme disease, there's a growing body of science now that is suggesting that for some people, the reason they may have a hard time recovering from Lyme or getting over Lyme is that Lyme has the ability to develop what are called persister cells or a persister state, okay? We see a similar situation in tuberculosis. Tuberculosis can take 9 months of using multiple antibiotics at the same time to get rid of it, for instance. We see the same thing in the world of leprosy, for instance, where you have to use multiple agents at the same time. And we've wondered about whether it could occur in Lyme for some time, but research that came out, I think around 3 or 4 years ago now, on Petri dish at that time has confirmed that, yep, Lyme has the ability to develop persisters, okay? And essentially what a persister is, many of you know that Lyme exists in different forms, okay? So we know Lyme has the spirochete, looks like a corkscrew, that's one form. That form can change into what's called a cyst form, which is a microscopic cyst, okay? And then Lyme has the ability to live inside of cells and to live outside of cells. And inside of cells, it's likely that Lyme loses its covering and it's just all the substance of the germ except for the covering, okay? All right, so we've known that for some time, okay? Now, what the researchers showed is that when these germs are exposed on a Petri dish for a long period of time to antibiotics, they have the ability to develop what are called persisters. And that is that about 20% of the spirochetes and about 20% of the cyst in these experiments had the ability to turn into what's called a persister state. And what happens in a persister state is basically the germ just slows down its metabolism, it goes into hibernation, and it just starts ignoring the antibiotics that are being thrown at it. Okay, all right. Now, if many of you have read information that I have on my website, I have an article about what are the various approaches you might try for persisters, okay? And one of those approaches is to do a 2 month on, 2 month off regimen like you're doing. And usually what I find is if it's going to work, it's going to be about 4 total rounds of going on and off. So 2 months on, 2 months off is 1 round. Okay, so this is a treatment that can take a long time, okay? And the idea behind that, doing 2 months on, 2 months off, is that when the germs are being bathed in antibiotics constantly, they can go into persister forms. And then if you stop, they come out of the persister state, they wake up and they become more responsive to the antibiotics. And once they're really once you're really active with symptoms, that means they're the most responsive to antibiotics, and that's when you go back in to do it again, okay? And that idea of doing a 2 month on, 2 month off is something that came to us out of from Dr. Burrascano, who happened to be one of the Lyme pioneers down here in the States. This is a way he claims he actually cured his own Lyme and may have cured some other people of Lyme too. Now, it's hard to say if we truly ever cure somebody, but that was his claim, okay? I find it to be a treatment that 2 month on, 2 month on helps maybe about 40% of people, but it is a treatment that I found some good success in about 40% of people, all right? Okay, now, there are other possible ways to go after persisters, and one of the people that's been looking at this quite a bit is a researcher named Ying Zhang, who is a medical doctor. And he recently published a new study, which is what you're talking to us about here, okay? Now, what Ying Zhang is doing, Ying comes to the world of Lyme disease from the world of tuberculosis. He's a tuberculosis researcher, and he has a laboratory at Johns Hopkins University that he has reprogrammed the lab to now that they're focusing on what to do about persistent Lyme. He's done a number of Petri dish experiments, not human experiments. And in his Petri dish experiments, he's getting some ideas on things that might work against persisters. And in fact, one of his most recent Petri dish experiments identified various essential oils that might kill persisters. Now, keep in mind, what works on a Petri dish may not work in a human, okay? So his oil experiments look good. The problem will probably be with those oils is it's hard to say if they're going to get absorbed into our bloodstream well enough to make a difference, okay? All right. All right, now one of Ying Zhang's earlier Petri dish experiments identified that daptomycin plus doxycycline plus ceftriaxone is an effective regimen to treat persister Lyme, all right? And then he went one step further more recently, and he did mice experiments with this combination. And in mice, it is shown that this got rid of persister Lyme as well too, okay? The next step will be human experiments. All right. Now, the problem is this. It's not at this point here in the States, and I would bet it's going to be the same situation you're going to face in Canada. Daptomycin is in a unique class of antibiotics that was developed to help with staph skin infections, okay? Very bad skin infections. And it's a drug that was kind of being held aside when everything else doesn't work. Here in the States, this can run, I think I priced it out. I think you're talking about, this is into the thousands of dollars. It's a super, super expensive medication, okay? And I think it's around $600 a day, if I'm right, that it's just a day at $600. Here in the States, because it will be looked upon as experimental, insurance companies aren't going to pay for it. They're just not going to yet, okay? And because it has to be administered IV up in Canada, it's likely that your infectious disease doctors are going to have to approve of this medication to be given to. All right, I don't know for sure, but I'm just knowing how things work up in your country. So at this point, although this regimen looks promising, I don't think it's an accessible regimen. In other words, I don't think it's something that the average person can get their hands on, even not the average, even somebody with great financial means. I just don't think that this is going to be an accessible regimen at this point. Okay. Keep in mind also too, what works in a mouse doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in a human. Okay. Now, Ying Zhang has done other regimens that are accessible. So for instance, in his Petri dish experiments, one of the regimens that he came up with that looks like it could work is to use a combination of doxycycline, cefuroxime, and Bactrim, the sulfa antibiotic Bactrim. And that is a combination that when I was practicing in Seattle, I did work with, and I found maybe about 40% of people get benefit from that regimen, okay? So that's an accessible regimen to you, okay? Now keep in mind, if you are going to do one of these Ying Zhang regimens, his experiments would suggest that you use them continuously. You don't pulse the 2 month on, 2 month off, all right? That's just what his experiments would suggest, okay? All right, so let me just show you. So I'm encouraged. This is really interesting. We got people researching about what do you do about persistent Lyme. The trouble is with this one regimen is it's not accessible. It's just not, it's going to be almost impossible to get that drug at this point for the majority of people, okay? All right, let me just, and those dollars that I quoted you were US dollars, okay? All right, let me do a quick screen share here. I want to show you an article that I have. All right, so take a look at my infection treatment plans chapter here. And here is my article called How to Treat Persistent Lyme, What Works, okay? And this was based on my clinical experience, all right? And then here I review the Burrascano ideas, I review some of Ying Zhang's, although I don't have this most recent experiment, okay? All right, now the big thing with persisters is that you've got to find an antibiotic regimen that will work on a germ that essentially is not growing rapidly, okay? And one of the things that daptomycin does in this regimen that's helpful is it basically destabilizes the germ membrane. It doesn't need a germ growing for it to work. It just destabilizes that germ membrane, all right? In his regimen of using the Bactrim, doxycycline, and cefuroxime I was just mentioning, the Bactrim destabilizes the germ membrane. That's why he's thrown that in there. Okay. All right. So anyhow, we'll see where this all goes. I think it's fascinating research, actually. Thank you for that question, Janelle. Hello, Nancy. For 14 months now, I've been on cat's claw, Octoba, teasel, ashwagandha, turmeric, Siddha, Hutunia, magnesium citrate, and also following the other recommendations on the Ross protocol. Still experiencing severe fatigue, joint and muscle issues, waking up in the mornings regularly feeling like I have a cold. Don't know how to proceed. When fatigue gets too severe, I try charcoal on and off. Also been on a month of probiotics now. Last week started Loracidin, just in case what I have is a viral issue instead. How long does it take for Loracidin to show effectiveness? I appreciate any tips. Glad you have your license back. All right. So let me comment. Many of you are aware I posted some information about what's happening with my medical license in Seattle. I never actually lost my license. I was on the verge of losing it. And the oversight that I was facing from my medical board was making it very difficult for me to give quality decisions to my patients. And that's why I stopped my practice in Seattle. They hadn't pulled it yet, but I anticipated they were going to, based on an investigation they created to try to bring me down. All right, now there's a lot. I'll show you all the article. You can read more in detail about it. All right. But what's happened is the investigation the board conducted claiming I was doing human experimentation on patients. That was what they were going to use to bring me down. Actually, I got a letter late last week saying that they had concluded that after reviewing 20 medical records of random patients in my practice, that they found nothing wrong. All right. So that means that I still get to keep my license. I'm still going to be working with my lawyers to make sure that if I were to go back into practice up in Washington State, that basically the board will go away now, because I have to be released from their oversight that they currently have over me, so that I can go back to freely practicing, so that I can do my best job of helping patients. Okay. And in the article I wrote, I said there's a remote chance I might even look at practicing out of Austin, where I am. I'm still open for consideration, but I've got to get my board to release some further sanctions they have on me from a case that started about 4 years ago. All right, so it's very positive. I expected that this 20 chart investigation was going to result in them pulling my license, and that's not going to happen. I still have my license. Now I got to just make sure that I can get it all freed up all the way so that I can go back to fully practicing again. And I think that may be months away. We'll see. I'll keep you all posted on that as it evolves. So anyhow, Nancy, it's hard for me to say what's going on with you. It's when you get into this kind of a situation, this is where I would need to spend some time doing a visit with you, actually. Because I live in Austin, Texas, where I am not licensed, I can't give direct medical advice to somebody. They would call that practicing without a medicine without a license here. Okay, so I don't know what's happening, and I can't do the consult with you to figure it out. The only one thing you might want to consider that I do see sometimes when patients are having a hard time and nothing seems to be working is I always like to go back and double check to make sure that whatever we're doing for Bartonella is working, whatever we're doing for Babesia is working. In other words, if you happen to have those infections, go back through the symptom list and make sure that those symptoms, those ones that are clearly Bartonella symptoms and those that are clearly Babesia symptoms, that they're improving. And if they're not, you may need to change those treatments, okay? The other thing, though, that I often will start at is to make sure that there isn't too many intestinal yeast in the intestines, okay? Because if you have too many yeast in the intestines, they are going to trigger your immune system to overproduce cytokines. And cytokines are the chemical that get widely overproduced if you have Lyme in you. In fact, your Lyme symptoms are really too many cytokine symptoms. And if you've got something else like too many yeast in your intestines living in you and staying active, then they could be causing too many cytokines to be made, and it can make it look like the Lyme part of treatment's not working. Okay, all right. So I can't say specifically for your situation. What I'm describing is how I would approach anyone in this kind of a situation. Is I would ask a bunch of questions to figure out, are there too many yeast? If there are, I'm going to go down the pathway of starting to treat yeast, maybe with a different regimen than a person's been using, okay? And then I will also, in somebody's not getting better, I'm going to keep reviewing what's happening with Bartonella and what's happening with Babesia symptoms, make sure I've got them on a regimen that's working. Keep in mind with Bartonella, if you are on a regimen that's working, like if your Sida and Hutania are working, and remember they work 70 to 75% of the time, so there's a 20 to 25% chance they're not working for you, okay? But if they are working, by 2 months of using them, you should start seeing some improvement in those Bartonella symptoms, okay? All right. All right, so that's kind of how I would go about approaching this if I had a chance to talk with you. I'd help figure that out. I want to show you some resource that you can take a look at, though, okay? Okay, so if a person's treatment is blocked and they're not getting better, one of the first things I'm always, again, going to want to take a look at is, could it be too many yeast, okay? So take a look at my yeast chapter here. And look at this article called A Silent Problem, Do You Have Yeast? I reviewed various ways you can figure out if yeast is there, okay? And if it is, then take a look at my article over here called Kills Yeast, A Brief Guide, okay? All right. All right, the other thing then, and actually a good, another art, yeah, that would be where I'd take a look, okay? And then I'm trying to figure out if you have Bartonella or Babesia, if they are getting better. Take a look at my article on how to diagnose, and take a look at this article called It Could Be Bartonella Babesia, The Symptoms and Signs, all right? And just see, have your Babesia or Bartonella symptoms started getting better if you have those, okay? All right. All right, now there's one other article I'll show everyone here because it's a good place to also look if you're just not getting better. There's an article, looks like I don't have it here anymore. Take a look at this article too called Lookalikes Blocking Recovery, okay? Make sure it isn't something else, in which in here I talk about yeast as being one of those possibilities, okay? All right. All right, thanks, Nancy. Good luck to you. Hello, Michael. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for sharing your knowledge about Lyme. You're welcome. I have unremitting frontal head pain that started in 2016 when I was diagnosed positive for Lyme with a Western blot test. My symptoms were flu-like chills, night sweats, fatigue, inner ear problems, vertigo, and head pain. After being treated with Doxy, I have occasional vertigo and unremitting frontal head pain. Could this be from a co-infection? If so, which one, and how can it be treated? Okay, so when I have somebody in my practice that had a lot of head pain, especially frontal head pain, there's two things I thought of. One, definitely think of Lyme. I mean, that's a possibility, okay? But the quality of frontal head pain can also be something that is seen with Babesia, all right? Now, just having unremitting frontal head pain does not mean you have Babesia, but it is a common symptom of Babesia, all right? So the ways to figure out if you have Babesia is look at all of your symptoms, okay? Now, many of you know that when it comes to Babesia, I am not a big advocate of testing for it because we estimate there's about 15 to 20 strains and we can really only test well for 2. All right. So for that reason, I tend to when I was practicing in Seattle, I would make my decisions to treat for Babesia based on the symptoms. Okay. So key symptoms to think of are night sweats. I mean, you've got those right there. Okay. So having a lot of night sweats, temperature instability or fluctuations, hot 1 minute, cold the next. Okay. One of the more interesting Babesia is sometimes people have frequent deja vu experiences. Okay. Frontal headaches, having a lot of racing and skipping of the heart, having periods of fainting can be part of that as well too, okay? And anxiety attacks, panic attacks can be part of Babesia. So the big ones would be night sweats, panic attacks, temperature fluctuations, frontal headaches, and deja vu. Those are the big ones, all right? Also, sometimes people with babesia get a lot of red little cherry marks on their skin. Now, keep in mind, as we get older, like at my age, we're going to get red cherry spots. It's just part of aging, is that the blood vessels kind of burst a little bit, okay? But if you happen to have all of a sudden gotten a lot of those, that sometimes can be a sign of babesia too, okay? So sometimes in my practice, when I had somebody with just this unremitting frontal headache, I would start wondering about babesia, and I would start looking and considering if I was going to treat it, okay? One other clue, babesia sometimes is just severe bone-drenching fatigue that won't lift. Babesia can give just this really, really severe fatigue as well too, okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Michael. Good luck to you. Hello, Ruth. Hold on here just a minute. My second question in regards C3A, C4A testing. Do you run these tests and have you found them useful? My doctor recently ran these labs and my C3A was normal and my C4A was totally normal. All right, so C3A and C4A are chemicals that are part of what is known as the complement system, okay? And without getting the specifics, complements are part of the way the immune system works to fight infection, all right? These two, C3A and C4A, can be elevated in acute Lyme, all right? C3A especially can be elevated in acute Lyme. C4A can be elevated in chronic Lyme, and it also can be elevated if you have mold toxin illness, okay? Those are situations that we'll see a C4A elevated. Now, it is also possible to have mold toxin illness and to have Lyme and have normal C3As and C4As, all right? But if your providers are looking for clues, because that's what we're looking for, we're just kind of looking at different signs, different pieces of the puzzle to help us make our decisions. And if they're looking for clues and you have an elevated C4A, it's just another clue that we would look at as to whether you might have Lyme or mold toxin illness, for instance, okay? All right, good luck to you, Ruth. Thanks for that question. Hello, Judith. Hello, Marty. I'm so glad to hear about your license. I am too, thank you. I'm struggling with the knee issues, and my orthodoc has suggested Orthovisc and our long-acting cortisone injections. Are hyaluronic acid joint injections, Orthovisc, contraindicated in Lyme disease? Are cortisone injections, joint injections, contraindicated in Lyme disease? Thank you so much. So, all right, so the issue that we have when somebody has Lyme is that we don't want to do things that suppress the immune system, because it's the immune system that, at least in some part, is helping keep the Lyme under control, okay? And steroids seem to actually suppress the immune system in a way that Lyme can take off, all right? So the worst kind of steroids you could do would be systemic steroids. Those would be ones that you either get in your bloodstream or you take orally. They go throughout the whole body, okay? All right, but not all steroids are equal. So for instance, steroids that you might get injected into a small spot on your arm would generally stay there, although some will get into the bloodstream. Steroids in a knee joint will most likely mostly stay in that joint. However, some will get in the bloodstream, okay? So you may get some systemic immune suppression. You definitely would get immune suppression in the joint, which may allow Lyme, if it's in there, to take off, okay? So for that reason, I generally, unless there are no other options to help, I would avoid steroid injections, all right? The Orthovisc, which is the hyaluronic acid, would be fine. Hyaluronic acid is a substance. It's kind of like it's a natural substance. It would act as a lubricant for the joint. That would be okay. The reason your orthos probably want to do the steroid injection too is that when you get osteoarthritis in the knee, which is the cartilage, so wherever two bones come together in a joint, okay, the coverage of those bones is cartilage, all right? And cartilage is softer and smoother than the bone it covers. and it has two functions. The cartilage allows bones to slide over each other easily. The second thing it does, it's a shock absorber. It helps keep those hard bones from banging up against each other, okay? Now, over time, because it's softer than the bone that it covers, it can wear down. And when it wears down, you start getting bone rubbing on bone, all right? And when you get bone rubbing on bone, the bone can become inflamed then, all right? And that can lead to a lot of the pain. So he's thinking of maybe quieting that inflammation down with the steroids. And then he's also thinking of adding lubricant, because you no longer have your bones being kept apart by cartilage that's been worn down. He's going to put a little lubricant in there to kind of keep those bones from rubbing directly on each other, okay? I think that would be okay, all right? And one other comment about steroids, because some people use steroid nose sprays and there's steroid allergy sprays. Again, probably they're not as bad in the world of Lyme as doing steroid pills or steroid injections. But as much as you can, limit this, because again, there's the possibility they get absorbed in the bloodstream and they suppress the immune system. All right, Judith. Thanks for that question. Good luck to you. Hello, Paula. I have mycotoxin poisoning and also heavy metals. Do you have any suggestions for me? So Paula, I guess I would need to give you specific suggestions. I would need to know more about your particular situation. Also, although the way you hear I'm answering my questions, I'm not telling anyone specifically what to do for their situation, because if I did, I could be accused by the medical board here in Texas of practicing medicine without a license, all right? So the best I can do, I can describe general treatment approaches and general ideas to consider. And for your situation, there's 2 articles I would look at, okay, which you'll be able to help. That'll give you the information you need. One is an article I have written on mycotoxins about how do you test for it, as well as treatment options. And there's another one that I have done on heavy metal toxicity as well, too, okay? So let me just try to find this for you here real quick. Now, if I decide to go back to Seattle, which again is possible, or I may stay here in Texas and get licensed here, either way. But once I'm living in a place where I am licensed, at that point, I can give direct medical advice. Even in these webinars, I can tell you exactly what to do in these webinars, because then I can't be accused of practicing without a license, okay? But at this point, I just have to be careful. I can still give a lot of information without telling a person directly what to do. I just don't want to run afoul of the medical board here and have them come after me for practicing without a license. All right, so let's see here. In terms of, take a look at my chapter called Detoxification. And there's a whole article I've written about mold toxin illness right here. It tells you what is it and what to try for it, okay? All right. And then in terms of heavy metals, take a look at this article called Heavy Metals, the Problem and the Best Test, okay? All right. All right. Thank you for that question, Paula. Good luck. Hello, Barry. Thanks for saying hi, Dr. Ross. I appreciate that. Hello, Brenda. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. What do you think of turpentine gum spirits on sugar cubes to treat Lyme? What are your thoughts of using turpentine as an essential pine oil? Thanks for your help. I don't have any opinion. I've never seen it used before, and I haven't ever recommended it to somebody. Essential oils in general can kill germs. We know that, but also we know that from some of Ying Zhang's research as well, too. The problem is, though, that I would tell you is that a number of years ago, many of you have been at this for a while, so you would remember, but there was a period where there was the craze where many people started doing essential oils to treat their Lyme. And people stopped their antibiotics, now rushed over and started doing essential oils. And in my experience, most of those people eventually came back to using the antibiotics again. I think what the issue is with the essential oils is I think that, yeah, on Petri dish they may look good. I just don't think that they are well enough absorbed into the bloodstream to be effective germ killers in a person. Okay? All right. There you go. Good luck to you. Hello, Barbara. Congratulations, Dr. Ross. Thank you. You're coming back. I'm on my way. I'm trying to. Yes, it's a big hurdle to have crossed. I will fly to Texas and be your first new patient. What are the? It may be. I may be back in Seattle. As I've said, I'm still trying to discuss my options at this point with some lawyers and figure out what's the best course. Where can I go and have the greatest chance of practicing without being obstructed by my board? Okay. Part of the problem is even though I am here in Texas, there's a 90% chance they would license me. There's a 10% chance they won't. And to find that out will take about a year to figure it out. So if and when the board finally releases me from what's called a stipulation agreement that I wrote about in that article, probably my quickest course of action would be to return to Seattle to practice. So, but I haven't made any decisions yet. We'll see. I was just surprised to get this letter from my board saying they released me from that investigation. That was just glorious news. All right, let's see. What are the dangers of hyperthermia treatment? The clinic in Germany uses a full body unit. A clinic in Utah uses a bodysuit where your head is outside. What treatment would be more effective or more dangerous? To be honest with you, I don't know. No one knows. We don't have any studies done that look at this, okay? I know that in Germany, because of the various risk of organs overheating and organ damage and et cetera, they monitor the people very closely. They have them kind of in an intensive care unit. I'm not sure about the Utah clinic, what their technique is, and I don't know which of these clinics has better results. I would have to say, of all the clinics I have looked at, the one that probably does heat you up the longest, which therefore could have the greatest benefit, would be the one in Germany. But again, if we look at the findings that I published or that I showed that have been done by my Lyme data out of LymeDisease.org, it looks like about 40% of people report benefit. So 60% don't get benefit out of this stuff, okay? And my own clinical experience when I was working in Seattle is of people that have been treated these various clinics, most of those improvements are not sustainable, all right? Now, granted, most of those have been treated in the Clinic St. George in Germany, and in Clinic St. George, you just don't get hyperthermia, you get antibiotics at the same time. And I question if the benefit that people are really getting is because they're on antibiotics at the same time, not so much the hyperthermia. And the reason is when you're heated up like that, when you get heated to the 170 degrees that they try to do at the St. George's Clinic, and they heat you up you stay at that temperature for 2 hours. 2 hours to get to that temperature, 2 hours you're at that temperature, and then they cool you down over the next 2 hours. When you heat up to that temperature, it dilates all your blood vessels up, okay? Which allows the antibiotics to get more deeply into the tissues. And therefore, you can get a greater killing. And I think the reason people get benefit out of those is probably more the antibiotics. Now, the St. George Clinic claims they think they kill all the Lyme in you. It's just not what I saw in clinical experience, okay? All right, very good. Thanks for the question, Barbara. Let's see. Hi, Don. Let's see. I've noticed anger increases my pain. Within about an hour of having an argument with someone, my whole body gets achy and my overall pain increases. Can you explain what is happening inside the body when this happens? Very interesting. It is well known, and there's been research done on it that shows that increased stress of any kind, of which anger, think about all the stress you're feeling when you're angry, would be like one of the more extreme stresses, okay? But increased stress of all kinds increases pain, all right? And I don't know the exact mechanism of why it happens, but it probably has to do with the interactions with the various neurologic chemicals in the brain, and that those, the pain side of those chemicals and the receptors get heightened, they become more sensitive. But it's a well-known phenomenon in medicine of stress, of which anger would be like an extreme stress, is known to make pain severely worse, okay? It has to do with the release of various neurotransmitters and the sensitivities of the receptors, et cetera. I can't tell you the specific mechanism, though, okay? All right. Likewise, one of the things that helps really reduce pain, sleep. All right. That period where you're calm, the longer and more sleep you can get, the better your pain will be. If you're a person with insomnia and your sleep isn't controlled, it makes pain worse. If you can do various lifestyle changes and or be on herbs and or be on medications to get sleep, your pain levels will go down. All right. There's well-documented research about that as well too. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question, Don. Hello, Tracy. Hold on here a second. Let's see. Are you familiar with Vibrant America, Vibrant Wellness Testing for co-infections? My doctor recommended it, but I can't find any info on the type of testing it is, and I'm looking for the best test for money. I tested positive for BART and others by PCR 3 years ago. Is the Galaxy right now for $1,000? Congrats on your license. Okay. So I am not familiar with the Vibrant America testing. I'll have to look into that one. I'm not familiar with that one. In terms of Galaxy Labs is probably one of the best Bartonella testing labs in the country, but it's expensive. And even their testing still focuses primarily on Bartonella henselae and Bartonella quintana, and is not accurate for all the other strains of Bartonella. So they miss a lot of it too. So when it comes to co-infections, I still stand by the idea that you have to look at what your symptoms tell you. Okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Tracy. Oh, I forgot to write that down. Vibrant Labs. Hello, Trevor. Let's see. Thank you for all the services and answers you provide to help all of us who are desperate for clues. You're welcome. See, my question. I have been unexplainably sick for going on 7 years. Just this last December via IGeneX, I was diagnosed negative for Lyme, positive for Rickettsia, Babesia, and Bartonella, in order of severity, Rickettsia being the worst. I've been on Doxy. So I just want to make a quick comment here, okay? So sometimes when you're trying to decide if somebody has Lyme, if you have evidence of other infections that are tick-borne infections, that increases the possibility that Lyme could be there. In other words, it says, yeah, you've been bitten by an infected tick, and if Bartonella and Babesia were there, probably Lyme came with it. Okay, I just want to make that observation. Okay, all right, let's see here. I have been on Doxy for going on 3 months, for Rickettsia and Valtrex for 4 months to keep the Epstein-Barr viral load down. My doctor wants to start Coartem next month to go after the Babesia. Seeing I am Lyme negative, will Coartem be just fine for killing the Babesia, or is this not strong enough? Should I also worry about the QT prolongation? Also, is the mitochondrial deficiency of the Babesia preventing me from weight training and causing the constant muscle fasciculations anytime I exert myself, notably upper body? Thank you for your time. Okay, so let me just give you some comments. Okay, so fasciculations are something that I would see, which is muscle twitches, everyone. A random firing of the nerves that cause the muscles to twitch. That is something I saw with both Bartonella and with Lyme. It could be coming from either one of those, okay? All right, now your testing says Babesia and Bartonella, all right? My observation, and also the observation of Burrascano, who I learned a lot of things from, Burrascano was one of the Lyme pioneers, is when you have Bartonella, Babesia, and Lyme present, go for your Bartonella and Lyme first, okay? And I don't know if Lyme is here. Remember, you can have negative Lyme testing and still have Lyme. But if you have a lot of symptoms of Lyme, in my experience in a situation like this, even if Lyme with testing was negative, I would still treat for Lyme, all right? And the problem with the regimen you're on right now, not a problem, but this regimen that you're on right now, The doxy is good for rickettsia and Lyme and can be part of a Bartonella treatment and can be part of a Babesia treatment, okay? But it's not going to be enough on its own to get rid of Bartonella, and it's not going to be enough on its own to get rid of Babesia, and it's not going to be enough on its own to get rid of Lyme. It could be enough on its own to get rid of rickettsia, though, okay? All right. If you have Lyme in you, the doxycycline is going to be effective against treating intracellular Lyme and spirochete Lyme, but it's not going to do anything for cyst Lyme, all right? So if I had a patient with a situation like this, I would wonder about Lyme. And if you had enough symptoms of Lyme, one of the first things I would do is I would add something to cover the cyst form of the germ. All right. And herbally, that could be something like taking grapefruit seed extract, 250 milligrams twice a day. Okay. All right. Now that's if you have Lyme. And I don't know if you do. So, but if there's enough symptoms that you have, look and see what the symptom list. Talk to your doctor about this. It's very possible to have Lyme in negative testing. If you have a lot of symptoms of Lyme, I would be covering for all forms of the Lyme germ. And that's one thing that is not happening with this regimen. You're missing your cyst form. Okay. All right. All right. Now, when it comes to treating Babesia, in my experience, coartem is I think I listed in my protocol as either a second or third tier. I think I call it a third tier. It is not a strongest way of doing it. Probably a stronger way to do it would be to use an atovaquone-based treatment, which would either be to use Malarone or something called Mepron, all right? And if you were to use those, then you don't get into any of the risk of the QT prolongation. So coartem is a drug that I would use in my practice only if other things were not working. I just didn't find it to be an effective frontline treatment. I think there were other agents that tended to do better. Okay. All right. So that would be another comment I would have about this treatment regimen. Again, talk these ideas over with your doctor though, too. Okay. And let me see here. And all of these infections could be leading to some mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are the energy factories found in every one of our cells. When you have chronic ongoing infections, the immune system trying to get rid of those infections overproduces what are known as oxidizing agents, okay? And oxidizing agents can help treat infections by damaging the membrane and damaging their DNA, okay? Now, they also can damage the fat membrane that makes up the mitochondria, which makes it so that the mitochondria cannot generate energy that easily. So what I would do in my own practice is if I had somebody that had a lot of severe muscle weakness and we'd already done treatment for, say, maybe 6 months or so, I might start thinking about doing specific mitochondrial repair work, all right? Okay, all right. And one of the key things I like using in my practice for mitochondrial repair was something called NT factor. It's a compound that has all the fats that make up the mitochondrial membrane. Do a couple pills 3 times a day for 2 months. After 2 months, you decrease it down to 1 pill 3 times a day for 4 months, okay? There's good studies that show, that it can help improve energy, all right? The other thing I would often do if I get somebody with a lot of mitochondria dysfunction, I want to get them on a good antioxidant to help stop some of that oxidizing damage, but also to help repair the mitochondria from the inside, repair cells from the inside. And what does a good job at that is glutathione. And I would like to use glutathione as a liposomal form. That means it's glutathione that's microscopically wrapped in fat to increase its absorption. Okay, so glutathione, everyone, is an antioxidant that's made in every one of our cells that repairs damage. It's used by the liver to help with detoxification, but it can help repair damage of any cell from the inside. Okay, and you would do like 5 milliliters 1 time a day of a liposomal variety. 5 milliliters is a teaspoon. Okay, all right. I'm going to show you a couple articles for things to look at, but I would, just looking at this, I would talk to your physician about whether you might need to actually just get full coverage for Lyme. You're missing the cyst form with this right now, okay? And I would talk to your physician about other ways to manage Babesia that don't involve using coartem. I found it to be a drug that works. It's not the strongest way to go at it. There's stronger ways. I'll show you an article I have on that you can print off and show to your physician as well, too, okay? All right. And then I'll show you an article about how to do a mitochondria repair. So let me go ahead and do a screen share here for you. Okay. All right, let's see here. So for mitochondria repair, take a look at this chapter called Energy and Fatigue. And take a look at this article called Power Up Energy and Mitochondria. All right, so everyone, mitochondria are the energy factories found in every one of our cells, all right? And again, they can get injured, okay? All right, so the things I like to do is glutathione, as I mentioned. You want to repair the membrane, and that's to use this, this product called NT factor. I have it right there for you, okay? All right. So you want to repair the outer damage. You want to increase glutathione to help with raised oxidize or as an antioxidant, okay? I don't know if you necessarily need to do the CoQ10 or the carnitine. Read this article to see if those would apply to you, okay? All right, so that's in my chapter on energy and fatigue, okay? In terms of treatment plans for babesia, take a look at the article I have called Kills Babesia. Where are you? There it is. This one, Kills Babesia, a brief guide. Okay, and what I basically do here is I break these into the ones that have the greatest chance of working. All the ones that have the highest chance of working, that can work up to 85% of the time, I put in tier 1. Those are the Malarone-based treatments or the Mepron-based treatments, okay? Tier 2, I consider the herb artemisinin, a drug called Larium, an herb called Cryptolepis. And actually, I guess I put coartem in here, but if you notice, I put coartem, which is this artemether one. I put it down at the bottom, okay? And then in tier 3, I have a medicine called, something called Alinea and something called clindamycin hydroxychloroquine, all right? But you can print that off for your provider as well too, okay? All right, Trevor. There's another article you could take a look at in the infection treatment plans. It's called a Lyme disease antibiotic guide. And in there, I describe why you would want to treat for the cyst form of Lyme too. And I mentioned the grapefruit seed extract in there too, okay? But again, you can have Lyme and have negative testing. And the fact that you have so many other tick-borne infections here raises the likelihood that Lyme is in there as well. And my own practice in situations like this was to treat for Lyme anyhow, okay? All right, good luck to you. Hello, Bettina, Dr. Ross, great news about your license. Yeah, thank you, thank you. First question, do you work remotely and how does that work with prescriptions? Also, I am having a relapse with neurological and cardiac symptoms. I believe it is related to vagal nerve issues. I get these feelings of tremor down my neck and down my shoulders to my heart. What is your understanding of vagal nerve tone and its role in the health and in particular in Lyme? Okay, so first of all, at this point, I do not work remotely. I can't work in any capacity treating a person with Lyme while I'm here in Texas because I don't have a license. Now, if I do get licensed in Texas, I could. In other words, I have to be licensed in the state where I'm practicing to give advice, okay? Now, as I said in the information I sent out earlier this week, I'm probably months away from being able to get the final sanction lifted by my medical board up in Washington, which I expect will happen. Once that's lifted, I might just return to Washington State. That would probably be the quickest way for me to get back into practice. But I am looking at other options in which Texas is an option. The Texas option, from discussion I've had with some lawyers down here, could take 9 months to a year to get licensed. Okay, so I'm anywhere from probably about 3 months to 9 months before I start actually being able to do even remote work. Okay, now the way I did remote work when I was doing it is the only way I would ever prescribe to somebody is if I physically had seen them in person at least one time. All right. So generally, if it was, I would do remote work with people, but I would give them suggestions that they were supposed to talk to their physician about, especially if it involved doing prescriptions. Okay. All right. All right. Now, the vagus nerve is a nerve that regulates the adrenaline, anti-adrenaline system in the body. Okay. And so it controls whether how your blood pressure is, whether it's low blood pressure or high blood pressure, controls how your heart, whether it goes fast or slow, controls whether you sweat, don't sweat, is the chemicals that get released in excess when you feel anxious. It controls how your GI system works. It can control a lot of things, okay? The problem is in Lyme, there's two things that might affect how the vagus works. One is Lyme itself can directly infect the vagal nerve. And if it does get infected, you can wind up having problems with hot-cold regulation. You can wind up having problems maintaining your blood pressure. You might have periods of racing and skipping of the heart. You might get a lot of excessive headaches, have a lot of excessive sweating. You might have a lot of air hunger. Those are actually, no, air hunger is more of a babesia symptom, but those are some of the symptoms that you might have, okay? Now, the other germ that seems to give you a lot of vagal nerve problems is babesia, all right? And in addition to the symptoms I just mentioned, with babesia, you can sometimes get a lot of air hunger as well, too. I forgot to mention that earlier tonight when I was talking about babesia symptoms, but a common symptom of babesia is having a lot of air hunger as well, okay? All right. So anyhow, I hope that gives you some ideas there. I don't know whether your vagal nerve issues are causing the tremors down your neck and the shoulders. I would need to know a lot more questions or ask you a lot of questions about other symptoms that suggest vagal nerve dysfunction to me. And obviously, there's no way for me to tell from this. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Tammy. Let's see, I'm being currently treated for cerebral vasculitis by my rheumatologist, and also had an EEG which showed bilateral temporal lobe dysfunction seizures. Have you ever seen these kind of issues caused by Lyme? I did test IgM positive in 2016, been ill since 2009. The neurosymptoms have become significantly worse in the last year. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Yes, I have seen a situation like this in Lyme, but before saying you have Lyme, in addition to having having these neurologic problems, I would want to see if you have other symptoms suggesting Lyme too, okay? So you might want to take a look at my video article about how do you diagnose Lyme. There's a whole array of symptoms to consider, and if you have a lot of them, then that can suggest it. The big ones often are sleep disturbance, severe fatigue, neurologic dysfunction such as you're having can be part of that. Thinking problems, muscle pain, joint pains, those would be the big ones, okay? But there's a whole list of other things too. But having just isolated neurologic problems like you're having does not necessarily mean you have Lyme. But I would want to see if there happens to be a pattern of more symptoms suggesting Lyme in there too, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Tammy. All right, let's see here. Hello, Trevor. Let's see. Thank you for all your services and answers you provide to help those of us who are. Oh, wait a minute. I think I answered this one. I did. All right. I think you may have posted it twice, or I failed to get rid of it. One of the two. Hello, Colleen. Let's see. I'm supposed to be taking ashwagandha 2 pills in the morning and 2 pills 1 and 2, but my sleep pattern has been unusual, and each night I go to sleep sometime between midnight and 7 a.m., then get up sometime between noon and 3 p.m. Where should I take the ashwagandha? Also, which doctors would you recommend for treatment of mold? For the Shoemaker protocol, East Coast preferably, but if the best doctor is somewhere else, I'll get myself there somehow. Thank you so much, Dr. Ross. I don't know specifically who's doing it on the East Coast. I just don't know. I mean, you could look at the Shoemaker site and see who he's recommending out there. Most Lyme literate medical doctors these days, to some degree, will wind up treating Lyme. So you could, or mold toxicity illness as well too. So you might want to reach out to iLads at ilads.org. on their contact page, they have a way to ask about where providers are in your area. It can be a limited list, unfortunately, but they might be able to steer you in that direction too. Okay. When I had somebody with disturbed sleep patterns, what I would do with my ashwagandha is I'd have them take it when they first got up, and then the second dose would be 4 hours later. That tended to be how I'd wind up doing that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Colleen. Hello, Eric. See, any idea when Otoba bark will be back in stock? So, Eric, no, I don't. So many of you know, so I have been recommending over the last year, well, more than a year now, a brand called Wildcraft Herbs, which is made up in British Columbia. And they make a really good product. She makes a very strong extraction. That's what I really like about her product. Unfortunately, she lost her supplier of Otoba, the person that was giving her, the company that was giving her the raw plant that she could then turn into her extractions, and had to locate another one. She did locate that other one, but her plant is stuck in customs. And it's not clear when the plant is going to be free for her to be able to actually turn it into an extraction. All right. She doesn't even know at this point, although the last time I talked to her was about a week ago. She thought there was some signs that it was going to be coming through, but there is no guarantees. And probably once she gets it through, it's going to be about another 3 weeks. So I think we're easily a month out or more. All right. And I said, that's even if she got it tomorrow, we're probably about a month out or more. And she hasn't even had it released yet from customs. Okay. Because that is such a problem, what I've done is I've started selling the Nutramedix products again. I think many of you know Nutramedix makes a cat's claw called Cemento. It's a TOA free version versus the Wildcraft Herbs is has TOA in it, okay, which is fine, but that's the main difference between those two. But I'm carrying their Nutramedix's Otoba bark, which is a product called Banderol, and I'm carrying it to carry it, but also I'm carrying it because I wanted people to have an option of getting Otoba. The Wildcraft Herbs Otoba has been out of stock for such a long time that there isn't really any place to get it now. So the option, if you want to do Otoba, and I think it's important for people to be on Otoba still, you don't want to go without that if you've been using it, would be to look at the Nutramedix. The difficulty with the Nutramedix product is price. It's just a very pricey product. I'm offering it at the lowest rate that they allow me to. Okay, so I'm not trying to price gouge anyone on this. In fact, all the prices that you see me offer on my site for any product are the minimum amount allowed by the manufacturer. If I offer at anything less, they will pull the product from me. So you'll see when you get to the Nutramedix product for a 2-ounce bottle, I think it's around $65, which is more than twice what the Wildcraft Herbs product is. But that's the best we can do at this point. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, Eric. But you do have the Banderol as an option. Okay. All right. Hello, Judy. You'll see Dr. Ross. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. You're welcome. What are your thoughts on electromagnetic fields in Lyme? Congratulations with the good turnout at the medical board situations. Thank you on that. Not so electromagnetic fields. You get them from electrical lines, you get them from the lights, you get them from your cell phone transmissions. They're in the world around us. Okay, not everybody is affected by them with Lyme. There are some people, though, that have Lyme that will note a dramatic worsening whenever they walk into an environment that has a large amount of EMFs. And those are people who probably should do things to limit their EMFs. But I don't think it's something that everyone needs to do, okay? Now, why do people get worse with EMFs? Well, for some reason, Lyme creates increased sensitivity to a lot of things. It could be chemicals, it can be sounds, it could be electromagnetic fields, all right? But there are some people that just develop extreme sensitivities, and it's just something that has to be avoided if that's the situation. And I know it's not an easy thing to avoid that, but I'm just saying that when I'm making decisions about whether people should avoid EMFs, it's not a blanket decision. I know there's some doctors out there like Klinghardt and others that would suggest everyone should avoid EMFs. I'm not in that camp because I think that A lot of people get well the majority of people get well without doing anything about EMFs, but there are certain people that have EMF sensitivities that do need to avoid them. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question, Judy. Hello, Jeannie. Let's see. I'm taking grapefruit seed extract, 250 milligrams twice a day for cyst busting. Will this be good enough through the whole Lyme treatment, or would I eventually need to go the flagell route? I've heard grapefruit seed extract is a weaker cyst buster. What do you say? So grapefruit seed extract is my experience, my clinical experience, I think it is weaker than flagell. But for some people, it does a great job. Okay, more than adequate. It does a great job. It is something in my practice I might use for 6 months, maybe up to a year. If I was looking at other options to break cyst up, and I did not want to go a flagell route, what I would wind up doing is work with the herbs Otoba and cat's claw together. Okay, and that's because those two herbs on a petri dish are shown not only to get rid of biofilm and to get rid of spirochete Lyme, they also can break up the cyst form of Lyme. So sometimes I would use those as my cyst buster. I might even combine it with a doxycycline, or I might combine it with a azithromycin or a clarithromycin. But it would be okay to use those two as your cyst buster as well if you don't want to use a grapefruit seed extract. Okay? All right. Thank you for the question. Hello, Charlene. Hi, Dr. Ross. Yay. Let's see. I know you still have a ways to go, but they are not taking your license. That's true. Thank you. Now, a silly question. Let's see. Hertz doesn't happen where the creatures live in you. Oh, does a Herx happen where the creatures live in you? So the Herx symptom. So yes, you can, as you start killing germs, some of the inflammation that occurs as part of a Herx reaction may occur where you have more inflammation in you already, okay? And that could be in places where the germ is more concentrated. It's possible, okay? But also a Herx reaction, which is the Lyme, when you start killing germs, the immune system sees those dead bug parts and reacts by making more inflammation chemicals called cytokines. Those cytokines go throughout the whole body. They get in the bloodstream and circulate everywhere, okay? So a Herx reaction is also a systemic reaction, systemic inflammation, although sometimes it will occur in a stronger way in areas where you have a greater pocket of the Lyme germs living, because there's already greater inflammation there to begin with, okay? All right. Good luck to you. Thanks for the question. Hello, Barry. Hi, Dr. Ross. My wife has Lyme disease plus Babesia and Bartonella and is on a pulse program of clindamycin with quinine plus minocycline and metronidazole and hydroxychloroquine. She also takes lipovitamin C, liposomal curcumin, liposomal glutathione. She also takes Otoba bark, cat's claw, Psittacoda, Japanese knotweed, Houttenia, CBD oil, AHCC, NAC, lumbar kinase, high-dose R-lipoic acid, ashwagandha, deep immune, and piconabig 3. 1 year with Lyme, treated 7 months. Can we cut out some of this to cut cost? The answer is yes, but I would probably look at doing this with the help of your provider, okay? Because I don't know enough about your wife's specific symptoms, but what I would tell you is you've got duplicate germ killers going on here. So your minocycline, metronidazole is an effective Lyme germ killer. Therefore, your wife may not need to be on the Otoba and the cat's claw, for instance, okay? And the clindamycin, quinine, hydroxychloroquine, that can be an effective Babesia treatment. And if that's working well enough, then your wife may not need to be on, I don't see that there's another Babesia here. But there's a lot of there is some duplication stuff going on here. These are things I would sit and review with your healthcare provider on that. Okay. I don't know enough about your wife's situation. I can't know enough in a brief questions like this, but I can look at that and say, yeah, that's a bit of an extensive list. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question, Barry. Hello, DJ. Is there any new treatment course you recommend based on the new study tying brain inflammation to chronic Lyme? No, I don't think it changes anything that I would suggest at this point, just to be brief about that response, okay? But it makes sense. It probably reflects something that we already knew, all right? Thank you for that. Hello, Patricia. Let's see. First sick with Lyme in 2015, but not diagnosed until 2018. My doctor is now testing me for possible autoimmune encephalopathy. Have you ever known Lyme or co-infections to develop into something like this? So Lyme disease can trigger immune system overactivity or reactivity leading to autoimmune conditions. So for instance, some people that have Lyme and then develop lupus, which is more of an arthritic condition, that would be triggered by Lyme, for instance, okay? So it is possible that autoimmune encephalitis can be triggered by Lyme, triggering the immune system to start attacking the brain tissue, for instance. It's possible, yeah. Hello, Charlene. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Yay. You got your license. Know you have a ways to go, but yay. Silly question. Oh, you already answered that one. I already answered that one, and thank you again for all your yays. I appreciate that. Hello, B. Dr. Marty. So happy to hear of the outcome in Washington about your license. Just an FYI, the sign up for your webinars are not sending email confirmations to attendants. Thanks for all you do. B, thank you. I'll take a look at that. I wasn't aware of that, actually. So I'll take a look back at that, how I have that set up. I'm actually just writing that down here, isn't it? Thank you. Let's see. Hi, John. Let's see. I had relapse after 1 year of Lyme. It is always stress that seems to bring the relapse on. Let's see. There's a second part here, I believe. Okay. What is the best course to avoid relapse? All right. So John's saying he's had a Lyme and after 1 year had a relapse and it seemed to be brought on by stress. Okay. So there's a whole article I have about how do you prevent relapse. All right. And I'll show that to you here in a minute. But essentially, there's 6 key steps that I have people take. One is get sleep. Get a good 7 to 9 hours of sleep, even if you have to take medications to have that happen. Sleep helps restore your immune system and helps your body deal with stress. Okay. Number 2, exercise to tolerance. Find some level of exercise that you can do that doesn't cause you to pay the price the next day. That helps your immune system work better too. Okay. Number 3, be on some type of multivitamin. Number 4, eat organic. The reason to do that is you don't want to put poisons in your body. Okay. Number 5, be on some type of an immune system support, especially if you're under stress. Okay. And number 6, de-stress. Deal with your emotional toxins. Whatever you can do to deal with that stress that keeps beating you down, if that means changing a job, if that means taking your spouse into counseling with you to get the relationship going better, whatever, going to counseling, doing meditation, look at ways to de-stress your world. All right. In terms of the immune support, you could look at doing either something called transfer factor Lyme Plus, which is a group of transfer factors which are proteins made by the immune system that help target the immune system to attack certain germs. The L plus has a mix in it of transfer factors that target Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Anaplasma, and 3 different viruses, okay? Or you could more broadly turn on your immune system by using a mushroom formula. Mushrooms also target the immune system, turn on the antiviral and anti-Lyme part of the immune system. And I like using a mushroom mix called the Immune Builder 5 mushroom formula, 1 pill 3 times a day. Those would be some things for you to consider, okay? Let me show you an article that you can take a look at that. All right, so take a look. I have a chapter on relapse prevention. Where is it? Here it is, relapse. Let's see if it works. There we go. Okay, take a look at this article called The End, or Finished on How to Prevent Relapse. And the main section about what to do to prevent relapse is all down here, okay? There were things I said: get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, regular exercise, emotional detoxification, be on a good multivitamin, have eat organic foods, okay? And then I tell you about the different things to support your immune system. The other thing you might want to do if you cannot get rid of stress in your life would be to also be on low doses of either prescription antibiotics or herbal antibiotics to police the environment to swat down germs before they pop back up. So for instance, the cat's claw otoba bark that I have recommended that people use to treat full-on Lyme, and usually I'd work people up to 30 drops of that twice a day. When I'm using it more at a dose to police the environment, to keep the germ load down, I might do it at 15 drops twice a day. That's what I was doing when I was in practice. Okay? All right. Hope that gives you some insights on that, John. Good luck to you. And keep in mind, one of the strongest suppressors of the immune system is stress. It can just be really, really hard, okay? All right. All right. I've got, Kelly was telling me that all she can see is the questions but no video. I'm wondering, has anyone been having a hard time seeing video tonight? I'm just seeing the people that are still here. If anyone, could people just write to me real quickly here and let me know whether they're seeing video feed tonight or not? I'd appreciate that. Okay. All right. I'm getting people saying the video is okay. Thank you for answering that. And the way that the comments aren't being seen though. All right, everyone. All right, good. All right, so it looks like maybe just one. Thank you for the response. I appreciate that. A lot of people responded there. Kelly, I'm not sure why you weren't seeing video. I don't understand why that would happen for you. But anyhow, all right. And then the questions. Yeah, I am getting all the questions. The trouble is I got so many questions I can't get to all of them, everyone. So I do see them on my side, and as I get to them, I try to post them for you to see them. It doesn't sound like they're always showing up for you tonight, though. All right, let's see. Kelly, thoughts on dapsone Lyme persister protocol? Okay. So remember everyone tonight, I said there's a number of things that have been tried to deal with these persister cells. There's the regimens that Yang Zhang has been coming up with. There was the protocol of doing a 2-month on, 2-month off that Burrascano came up with that I found some success in my practice. And then about a year and a half, 2 years ago now, Horowitz, who treats Lyme out of New York State, did a project of looking at people in his own office, his own practice, and he identified a drug that is used for leprosy, which has persister cells, called dapsone, and he decided to start trying that on his Lyme patients too. All right. Now, in his study, at that time of 100 people, and he's republished now, I think of 200 people. What he did in his study is everyone was on a drug called cefuroxime. They were all on a tetracycline, I believe, dapsone, and some of them also were on rifampin, or they might be on other agents to treat babesia too. But the thing that was consistent in all of them is they all took dapsone, and I think a tetracycline and a cefuroxime. Some might also be on rifampin, and some of those might also be on other babesia agents, okay? And what he found on his dapsone protocol is that around, I think the people that showed improvements, I think it was around 60 to 70% had improvements, okay? The thing that's interesting, though, when you break down his research that he published on this, is though that sounds really impressive, the improvements only ranged of about 10% on average, okay? So this wasn't huge improvements. I know he believes strongly in his regimen, and he's out promoting it quite a bit, but when you really get down to it, these weren't huge improvements, okay? Now, dapsone, when I was using it in my practice, I found it to be a very hard drug for people to take. It has a lot of side effects that feel and look a lot like the way a Herxheimer does, okay? And it can also trigger quite a severe Herxheimer. The minimum dose that I found to be helpful is people had to get at least to 50 milligrams. Horowitz at that time was promoting a 100 milligram dose, and I believe more recently he's promoting a 200 milligram dose. I found it very hard to get the average person up to 100 milligrams just due to its side effects, and also because it can cause quite a bit of anemia actually too, okay? So it can help. I found it help in my practice maybe about 50 or 60% of the time, but a lot of people had to stop it because they just couldn't tolerate the side effects, okay? Let me show you an article that I've written about it too, because I think I have more of these numbers directly in it. So I do have an article about dapsone. Okay, dapsone for Lyme, a miracle antibiotic, okay? And as I said, it's a harsh drug. I would have you read through more of this on your own. Bear with me. I'm trying to look at what I found when I look at his. Yeah. So on average, people had improvements of 10 to 20%, okay? All right. Now, Horowitz claimed his studies showed that 59% of people got improvements on the regimen, which really sounds impressive, okay? But as I said, when you really break his data down, the improvements are of about in the range of 10 to 20% improvement in overall symptoms. Even though 59% of people got help, it only helped them improve about 10 to 20%, okay? All right? And 30% of patients could not tolerate it at all due to side effects. He doesn't publish that, but he did speak about that at one of his lectures a couple of years ago, and that had been my experience too. It's just a really harsh drug to take, okay? All right. So yes, I think people can get improvement. The average range of improvement is about 10 to 20%, but 30% of people can't tolerate it and have to stop. All right? Okay. All right. Very good. Thanks for that question, Kelly. All right. That's it for me for tonight, everyone. Keep your eyes out in your email tomorrow morning, and we'll get an email out to you notifying you that the video recording for tonight is ready to be viewed. You'll also, in that email tomorrow morning, get the ability to actually sign up for next week's webinar too. Okay? All right. Thanks for being here tonight, everyone, and good luck to everyone. Good night.